Yo, 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 and welcome back to Creeps and Crimes
Podcast.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Morgan. Happy Thursday and happy episode 199.
Yeah. Okay, Morgie Poo has had some crazy shit happen to her.
Full story on our Piping Hot Goss that will be released either today or tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe Thursday or maybe Friday. I'm thinking
tomorrow also. Yeah. So full story on there if you want to check out my crazy fucking Monday this week.
Yeah, dude.
But I saw my very first. I can't say F
anything
today.
that has an F in it. She's not saying it.
Like why?
My very.
I saw my very first ghost. It was a little boy at the end of my bed. He had on glasses. He was in a blue or green striped shirt. About 4 or 5 years old. We made direct eye contact for about 30 seconds early in the fucking morning.
Just early as hell.
And I mean, it was not like an apparition. It was not like see-through. I never thought a ghost would look so realistic. It looked like a real human boy.
A real life boy.
A real life boy.
That did look like a real life boy.
Standing at the end of my bed.
Yeah, he sure was.
Staring at me. Like this.
Just waving.
It was the most surreal, craziest thing I've ever experienced. I wasn't scared. I was definitely shocked. Left early for work. Arrived at work 20 minutes early, which that
unheard
is
of.
Out of character for me.
Yeah.
Threw off the rest of my work
Off
day.
brand.
And you'll have to hear about the rest of it on
Piping Hot Goss.
Piping Hot Goss.
Because there's just so many details. And then we got to hang out with the ITGIRL this weekend. Miss Susan, our official medium for Creeps and Crimes podcast, psychic medium, angelic psychic medium.
So much fun.
Creeps and Crimes, and Ellen, which is her daughter-in-law that helps her book and like respond to everyone and does her social medias now. So we've had a great
They came over for a little teeny weekend.
Yeah, we had like a little birthday party with just our like immediate friend group, and obviously Susan because she's our immediate friend group. And it was to celebrate everyone's birthdays that we had missed within the first 6 months. I hosted at my house. It was so fucking cute. We'll be posting pictures towards the end of this week.
She was in her hosting era.
I was in my moment. It was the first thing I've ever hosted at this house.
Put it right out of her pussy.
Yeah, I really did. I was like, guys, I put my whole fucking pussy in this shit. So can't wait to see it tonight. Like literally.
It was really cute.
It was so cute. We had the best time hanging out, and I was so glad that Susan and Ellen came. And
I wish we like did that
gifts.
like once a month, just like alternated houses.
That would be so fun.
Everyone hosted some sort of dinner. We just got together.
Yeah, or quarterly. Quarterly is a lot more reasonable.
You're right.
Yeah, we could do it once a quarter. We should do that.
Okay.
For real. Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah. You take it next quarter?
I'll take dibs.
Oh my God.
That's fine. I'll take dibs.
Oh my God. I'm so excited.
We should really just invest in tables, probably.
Yeah, at that point. I bet they're really not that expensive. I was blown away. We got a cake from the Artisan Cakery. So good.
So good.
So fire. No, it's gone. Yeah, the cats yeeted it off the counter. Yeah.
How dare they?
Yeah, I was pissed. But honestly, it needed to go. It had been sitting there for so long because it can't fit in my fridge.
You should have sliced it and froze it.
I should have done that. But honestly, I ate the hell out of that thing.
So you're sick of it?
Yeah. I was done.
So good. I could go to Artisan today, right now.
Right now, I could go get
You know what I had
some
yesterday?
cakey. What?
Monday.
What?
Sunday.
Okay.
For lunch. Kava.
Oh,
it was so nice, but dude,
kava.
I placed my order through the app to pick up.
Yeah.
Me and Ollie got in the car, drove there, and the line was out the door.
What happened?
I will never go. It was so fucking busy. I don't know if everyone just discovered kava with us or we trendsetters
Maybe.
I mean, you've known about it. I just found out about it, but we only have just talked about it on the podcast. So is everyone a listener? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. That
not.
makes me feel very special.
Because I looked like dick. Either way, the line was out the door, and it wasn't just like a single file line. It was by the masses, like clumps of people. And I walked in, I was like, this is a fucking mall line at Forever 21.
Oh my God. So I've been to Trader Joe's like 100 times in the last like 5 days. No, not even that. Of course it's packed. But I had to go there last night because I had gotten like a stir fry from there, and I needed teriyaki sauce, and I wanted more of the chicken soup dumplings. Those were my shit. But I think
what
last
stir fry
night
do you get from there?
I could just get the vegetable one.
Okay.
Yeah, because I like adding our own stuff to it, and we had some chicken, but I didn't have any teriyaki sauce. When I was there though yesterday, and I was on the phone with you right before I walked in hearing about the ghost encounter.
I was having a meltdown on the phone. I was like, I know you've been, I didn't even say this to her, but I knew that she had been sitting in the parking lot for at least 25 minutes talking to me. And she was like, Morgan clearly needs to talk, because I was like, and then
the only thing I was like nervous about was like I realized you were on my phone, so I mean on my car, so I was like, oh no, people are hearing this
loud as fuck.
I literally pulled out of one parking spot and moved to another in the back and turned you down.
New bitch.
Yeah,
you know?
I was like, hold on, no one can hear
bitch.
this shit. So, but it actually worked out because all the people that originally parked around me were gone by the time I went in.
That's good.
But anyways,
I'm not worried.
I go in there and I'm wearing our I think it was season 2. It was like our first really big merch launch that we did. No, it was the 22222.
222
where we did the skater, the checkered thing with like the skater, the ghost skater, and it said "Stay Creepy" on it. It's my favorite shirt. I have an XXL. I just wore that to bed
the other night.
I wear it to bed like all the time.
It's a great sleep shirt.
And that's why I put it on, because I literally had on this exact same outfit yesterday, and I was like, it's too hot. Yeah, it's too hot to take this sweatshirt out. So I just put on my sleep shirt, which was that shirt.
Right.
So I go, and as I'm checking out, this woman was so nice. And if you would have been there, you would have not even ended up in her line, because she was just like chit-chatting it up with the people.
I know who she is. No. Yeah. I know who she is.
Miss Patty?
Yes.
Yeah. She just was like the next one open. Everyone else was lined up. So I just went, I have never seen her before. So I go up through her line, and she was taking forever to clear the little thing for me to sit the basket down, because she was talking to the people. Now, I didn't mind. I was listening to a podcast in my ear. I don't give a fuck. So I just stood there holding the thing until she was done, and I came up, and it was like this young boy with her bagging everything, and she like cracks a joke or something. We're laughing to each other, and she's like, how's your day been? I'm like, oh, it's been amazing. What about yours? And she's like, oh my god, it's been amazing. And then we turned to the kid and we're like, what about you? Has your day been amazing?
So much better than me.
So we're just kind of giggling, and she's like, I really love your shirt, like that's so cute. My niece would love this. She's into like paranormal hauntings, all the things. And I was like, oh my god, well, thank you so much. I actually designed this shirt. It's for my podcast. And she's like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's me and my best friend, and we do a conspiracy, paranormal, and true crime podcast. And she's like, oh my God, let me get the name of it. Like prints out some of the receipt and writes it down. She's like, I'm going to give this to my niece. She loves podcasts like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, tell her to give us a listen if she wants to. But yeah, she was really sweet.
Well, if you're Patty's niece and you're listening to this, it's nothing I hold against your aunt.
Morgan just can't be anywhere where people extra
and I'm
talk.
Also like, yeah, I just don't want to chat. I just want to be in and out. And
Morgan's the worst in a grocery store.
She acts like your Aunt Patty, if she doesn't have a bagger, she lays every grocery out and then she bags them after she rings them up. I just don't have the time for that.
Yeah,
it's just too hot.
I get it.
It's just like I've been there too long.
Yeah, we had a great conversation though, so I hope you're listening to the podcast.
I at Trader Joe's, I look to see who is bagging while ringing.
Yeah,
I do.
I don't,
and it's only a few of them that do it. Because
but
I don't
never
think they're
in a rush
to.
like that.
Oh, I'm always like, get me the fuck out of here. But
yeah, we're done. All right.
So anyway, here's how today's gonna go.
Yes. You were going to have the dream. We were going to put the dream work in this episode, but we decided against it because it deserves its own little spotlight for the people who don't give a flying fuck. So basically what we're going to do is it's going to be its own separate little entity. It'll go on YouTube as So Unserious, and it hopefully will be on audio on your RSS feed. But another thing that happened is Morgan and I both ended up having two-parters that we were going to do on the podcast, both today's episode being part 1 and then next week's episode being part 2. But with the events that unfolded this weekend, we decided that Morgan's case probably it's not the time or place for it to be public.
Gonna go on Patreon.
So we're gonna put that on Patreon for now, because she did the notes. This is what fucking sucks. She was being proactive.
I was.
Because she has visitors in.
I was being such a good girl.
She finished her notes early. And then who would have thought that the world would almost implode this weekend?
Right.
So we were like, yeah, it's just not the time frame to do it. We understand. So I'm going to go solo. That way you don't have to wait for part 2. I'm going to knock it all out today. And Morgan's going to go solo on Patreon with her case that eventually we will bring to the public.
And if this is something that you really do want to hear, it'll be on our lowest tier. So it'll be on our $5 tier.
And we're going to jump into it now.
If you're driving, throw that shit on cruise control.
If you got a glass, pour that shit up.
And let's get creepy.
Okay, guys, so today I am going to be doing the Colonial Parkway Murders that took place in the late 80s.
I've heard about this.
In like Virginia area.
I actually haven't heard about this, but a lot of people
have requested it. Yeah. So this is really long. Like I said, this was originally going to be a 2-parter. It's going to take up the whole episode. And there's going to be a lot of people in this story that we're going to be discussing, but I've tried my best to condense it down as much as possible to make it easier to follow. But I will say that there are sexual crimes in here. There's sexual crimes against a child in this. It's going to be very disturbing. This is a pretty infamous case because of just how long it went on, and what exactly happened. Keep that in mind as we go through this case. If you're not prepared for it today, then come back at another time and listen to it. Okay, I'm gonna hop into it. So it was somewhere between 5:30 a.m. and 5:45 a.m. in the early morning hours of Sunday, October 12th, 1986, when either a jogger or just like a passerby was taking their normal route in the morning. They were passing by the, I should have written this down. It looks like Cheatham? I don't know. They're going to be eating me the fuck up. Maybe. Annex Overlook off the Colonial Parkway, only about 7 miles east of Williamsburg, Virginia. And this driver notices some sort of disturbance off of an embankment. And peeking over, they realize that it was a white 1980 Honda Civic. And it looked as if the car had veered off the road and into this super dense shrubbery that was holding it from this 15-foot drop at a 45-degree angle straight into the York River.
Whoa, what a lucky catch.
Exactly. Now, this person knew that it would be nearly impossible for them to get to the car without injuring themselves or maybe accidentally causing the car to fall. So instead of going down there and messing with the scene, they somehow got to a phone and they called first responders. This accident took place within the Colonial National Historic Park. So park rangers responded to the call because that's their jurisdiction, like we learned in the Yosemite murders. A few of these rangers carefully made their way down the embankment to the location that the car was, using the path that the accident had created. And they were slipping, sliding, grabbing onto the floor as they're going down. It's steep. And once they got to the back of the car, they realized that there were 2 people still inside. Now, not knowing exactly when this accident had occurred, but assuming that it happened sometime overnight since this was their first call about it, the rangers assumed that these individuals were badly injured, like critically injured, since there were no signs that they had attempted to free themselves from the car or even move. So thinking quickly and assessing the situation, hoping that these dense shrubs were actually as strong as they looked, the rangers decided that they were going to shatter out the back window, so the rear window. They do this, and after clearing the glass and reaching their heads into the car, the rangers were shocked. It was immediately clear to them that the individuals in the car were deceased. However, it was obvious that their deaths were not the result of a car accident. There were 2 women inside. One woman that was in the trunk of the hatchback, which had access to the front row seats. If you guys don't know what the interior, trunk. Yeah, but it's really tight. So most of the time that people own these 1980 Honda Civics, they would lay those back seats down, or I don't know if you could even do that. I think you'd have to take them out, and it would give you a full bed. But these people had their back seats up, and so it was a little tiny little reach in that you could do if the window was open down into the hatchback of the trunk. And one woman was in the hatchback of the car, and the second woman was lying in the back seat with her foot jammed between the driver's side door and the driver's side seat. Both of these women's throats had been slashed so deeply that they were nearly decapitated, with the cuts running from ear to ear.
Oh, man.
And there was this overpowering smell from the time that they busted that back window out of diesel fuel, which both of the women and the interior of the car and outside of the car had obviously been drenched in, but they had never been set on fire. Realizing that they are now handling a murder scene, the rangers quickly backed away from the car, made their way back up this steep embankment to the road, and they call in the FBI, as this had taken place in a national park, and it's a double homicide. The FBI rapidly responded to the scene, and you have to remember how close this is to Quantico,
right?
You know, so the FBI rapidly responds to the scene where they took photos of the victims, the car, the earth around the site, and the road before having the car towed back out of the embankment and onto the road. After which, they began processing the scene with a forensics and CSI team. Investigators observed that the keys were still inside of the car, but they were tossed around from the crash, but they were near the driver's seat, with a Carly Simon album and a church flyer in the floorboard of the passenger side. In the back of the car, they found a gym bag, a jacket, shorts that were stained with blood, a blue cardboard carton of some sort. Like, in my head, the first thing that I imagined was the milk from like your school. Like, mine was in a blue. One of them was in a blue.
Schneider's milk and a little blue cow print.
Exactly. Just like that. But they've never specified, or maybe they have, but I couldn't find it, what type of carton it was. And there was a blue blazer on a hanger, 2 purses, one belonging to one of the victims with their wallet still inside, and the second belonging to the second victim. However, the second victim's wallet was outside of her purse, lying on the floor of the car near the front. But both were untouched, hadn't been sifted through, nothing like that. And matches inside and outside of the car lying around. Now, interestingly enough, these matches had actually been like struck and lit, but never seemed to start the fire that clearly the suspect wanted there to be. Probably because they used diesel fuel, which does not ignite the same as gasoline does, which immediately told the FBI agents a lot about their suspect, because they clearly had access or some use for diesel fuel for them to just have it on them. Yet this person, the suspect, didn't know how it worked, clearly. So running the plates, investigators knew the 1980 Honda Civic belonged to a 27-year-old woman named Kathleen or Cathy Marion Thomas. And once they searched through the car and found the 2 IDs, they were able to confirm that Cathy was the victim that was found in the hatchback of the car, and the second ID belonged to a woman who was found in the backseat of the car, 21-year-old Rebecca or Becky Dowski. Cathy Thomas, who was originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, was a United States Naval Academy graduate who was working at the time as a stockbroker, while Becky, originally from Poughkeepsie, New York, was a senior at the College of Williams and Mary in Williamsburg, majoring in business management.
Both out of town, though.
Both out of town. After speaking with Cathy's family, investigators learned that she and Becky were in a relationship, and it had just started to get pretty serious, with Cathy's family really excited to be meeting Becky for the first time at Thanksgiving of that year. Obviously, Cathy had, from what I could tell, a very supportive and progressive family for 1986. In fact, they even knew that this was her second serious relationship with a woman, and that her sexuality was actually the main reason for her leaving the Navy. As I said, Cathy was a graduate from the U.S. Naval Academy, but what I failed to mention was that she was a part of the second class ever of women to graduate from the Academy.
Oh, that's amazing.
And that's hard enough on its own, but what a lot of people don't talk about enough, in my opinion, is what exactly the military was doing at this time when it came to the LGBTQ plus community. Like the fact that they would actively investigate anyone that was suspected of being a homosexual, and if you were caught, you would be immediately dishonorably discharged or brutally murdered, like we saw in the Alan R. Schindler Jr. case from 1969. I don't think I've covered that on here, but I need to.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It doesn't sound familiar to
me. He was trying to get out of the military, trying to get them to dishonorably just charge him, just get him the fuck out, because he had come out and was getting death threats, getting bullied, was telling them like, someone's gonna kill me, like, please help me. He was murdered when they were docked in a different country. Wow. And the ship just left. It's
what?
Still, yeah. No, yeah.
Still
there's so much.
Fucking human being. He's still an American citizen.
Right. I mean, there's a lot to it. Yeah.
Still a military member. That's
right.
Fucked up.
Now, Cathy had been investigated by the Navy in the past, after which she decided to leave the Navy and just start over. She began working as a stockbroker and got herself an apartment that was located about 45 minutes away, like a drive away from Becky's dorm, all of which Cathy's family were aware of. However, this detail about them being in a relationship, much less a serious relationship, took Becky's family by surprise, as she had never come out to them. like the last they had heard, she had just broken up with a long-term boyfriend just like a few months earlier. And they actually had a really hard time coming to terms with this secret that their daughter had kept from them while also mourning her. And I'm not sure like what, I didn't read any more into that because it made me sad.
Yeah, that's sad.
Now, once the crime scene was thoroughly processed, both Cathy and Becky's bodies were taken to the medical examiner's office for autopsies. While forensics teams began fingerprinting the car and taking samples of all the blood, fluid, etc. that was inside the car, which was actually very little blood and fluid, minus the diesel fuel, leading investigators to believe that their murders had to have taken place at a second location and then they were placed back into the car. The autopsies found that both Cathy and Becky had rope burns around their wrists and their necks with clear signs of strangulation, which would ultimately be determined to be their causes of death. Following their deaths, both women's throats were slashed and then both of their bodies and the car were doused in the diesel fuel. Both Cathy and Becky were covered in bruises all over their bodies, which mainly looked to be due to being roughly moved around and handled, either post-mortem when their hearts maybe were still beating or beforehand, and some possibly in self-defense. But really the only things that were clear signs of self-defense were discovered on Cathy. First, she had a cut in the webbing between her thumb and index finger. Secondly, some reports say that it was on the same hand, but the coroner discovered a clump of hair that did not belong to either Cathy or Becky. Thirdly, there was a large bruised handprint found on Cathy's butt, as if she had been slapped really hard. And lastly, another piece of crucial evidence that was discovered during their autopsies actually came from Cathy's hair. So tangled in her hair was what looked to be a 1-inch piece of plastic rope or line of some sort. Both of the women were fully clothed with all of their jewelry still on at the time of their deaths and discoveries, with no evidence of sexual assault. So with everything that investigators had collected so far, they were left with a few thoughts. Number one, finding the location that the women were killed was going to be a big part in this case because it would hopefully help them to piece together how and where this attack happened. Because it's really odd that these two women would be so taken by surprise and killed so quickly by one attacker that they didn't have, more than just a few defensive wounds on them, meaning that they probably had very little time to react to their attacker. Number two, the motive was beyond unclear. It wasn't a robbery because both of the women still had on their jewelry. They had their wallets, their purses. They were not touched or even sifted through. There was cash and other valuable items in the car still. It wasn't a sexually motivated crime because, as I stated before, there were no signs of sexual assault on either of the women and they were found fully clothed, meaning that it was personal in some way to the attacker. So was this person targeting one of the women for some reason? Unlikely, as it was later determined that they had been strangled from behind, which is in a personal attack like they typically don't do. So that leaves us with the question of, is this a hate crime?
Right.
With someone targeting them because they were two women in a romantic relationship, possibly, but neither of the women were very public with their sexuality, but maybe they could have been attacked at random since they were at this lover's lane. Maybe someone saw them.
Right.
Well, before any of these questions could be answered, investigators had to figure out Cathy and Becky's last known movements. Now, the coroner determined that the women had been dead for at least 24 hours prior to their discovery. And in their stomachs, there was partially undigested food, indicating that they had both eaten a meal just before their deaths. Investigators began asking around to the couple's friends, their family members, local restaurants to try and create a timeline of their final hours and days. But really, because it's, 1986 and you don't have cell phones to track or take several pictures on to show what you're doing and where you're at all times, the last confirmed sighting of the women was from October 9th, almost 3 days prior to their discovery. It was the Thursday before fall break had started, so Becky had packed up all of her car to just prepare to visit home with her family so she could just immediately leave after her classes on Friday. But that Thursday evening, she was in the campus computer lab working on an assignment until Cathy came to the lab to pick her up at around 6:30 p.m. So Cathy goes into the lab to tell her that she's here. As soon as Cathy enters at 6:30, Becky logs off her computer and the two of them walk down the hall to a second lab where Becky logged onto a second computer that was connected to this printer. She printed off her assignments and then the two women left in Cathy's car, which was the last time that they were ever seen alive. That's been confirmed, which we know for sure because on Friday, October 10th, Becky did not show up for any of her classes and her car was left in the same exact parking spot and position that it was left on Thursday evening when she had put it there. It's assumed based off the women's autopsies that after leaving that printer in the lab and walking out to the car, they likely went to dinner somewhere. And after, they probably went to this like Lover's Lane area that's off the parkway that's commonly used to hang out privately, considering Becky lived in a dorm with a roommate and suite mates, and Cathy's apartment was a 45-minute drive away. So why would Cathy drive all the way there just to drive all the way back and then drive her back
Right,
again?
that makes no sense.
It makes no sense. So they probably just went to this Lover's Lane on the Colonial Parkway. So it's at this point that investigators assume that they came into contact with their attacker. They're on this Lover's Lane that no one in their lives knew that they were going to, with no one that had any sort of obvious motive to want them dead in their lives, meaning they were likely approached by someone at random that saw them and then attacked them. And just 4 days after their deaths, an FBI agent on the case told Bill Thomas, who is Cathy's brother, something that was truly unsettling, and like knowing this in hindsight blows my mind that an FBI agent would ever say, like, really? But basically what he said was because of Cathy's wallet being found out of her purse, she was the driver and the owner of the car, this could potentially have been the doing of a police officer or someone pretending to be a police officer because her wallet was left out in the front seat, pulled out of her purse.
Right, license and registration.
And the window was partially rolled down.
That is weird.
Yeah.
But why would they say that?
Why would you go out and say that? But the one thing that the FBI knew for sure was that whoever their attacker was, they enjoyed being on the water and fishing, which was based off of one of the first profiles ever created by the FBI Behavioral Science Unit.
Wow.
And this is what they had to say after observing the details of this crime. Now, I do want to source this one part. I just was listening to this on the side, like after I'd finished my notes to make sure that no one else was having information that I didn't know about. So I went back to 2018 and listened to the Crime Junkies episode where Ashley Flowers and Britt covered the Colonial Parkway murders in a 2-part series, I think it was, now 3-part, where she had actually worked with Bill Thomas, Cathy's brother, to get certain details, such as this profile that was created. And I couldn't confirm it exactly with every other source. So I was like, no better source than Cathy's own brother.
Right.
So I'm quoting this part from the Crime Junkies episode. This is what the Behavioral Science Unit had to say. The 1-inch piece of plastic rope or line that was found in Cathy's hair was likely a nautical line. Additionally, a lot of boats tend to run on diesel fuel. Yep. Like trucks, but not your everyday car. And then the cuts on both of the women's throats were made with an extremely sharp knife, such as one used to gut a fish, not your everyday pocket knife or kitchen knife, which all of these things point to this being the doing of some type of waterman. Quote, someone who works on boats, is somewhat of a nomad, lives paycheck to paycheck. He could either hate women or just lesbians specifically. End quote. And really, this is where the case of Cathy and Becky went cold. They had a few suspects that they looked into, but none of them really fit the bill or had enough evidence to actually point a finger at them. So time went on, and the case of Cathy and Becky went cold.
Wow. The first profile, though.
Yeah, one of the very first. That's crazy. They were like in the very early stages of getting it like put together. So this was probably done by Johnny Douglas and the other dude.
That's nuts.
Yeah. On the night of September 19th, 1987. So those happened in September of 1986. This is almost a year, I think, almost to the date later. Let me confirm that. I might be being crazy. No, yeah, it was October 12th, 1986 when Cathy and Becky's car was found. So this is a year and a month later.
And this is what, in September?
This is in September of 1987.
So not 11 months later, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm going totally backwards. Don't listen to me on math, all right?
You're backwards.
Yeah, I'm mixing that up. So it's the night of September 19th, 1987. 20-year-old salesman David Lee Nobling agreed to drive his younger like little cousin and his little brother tagging along on his little cousin's date to the movies.
Cute.
And the girl that David's little cousin was going on a date with was 14-year-old 8th grade student Robin Margaret Edwards. On the way to the movies, Robin, the cousin, and the little brother, I believe, all sat in the bed of the truck because it was only like a 2-seater, like a, one.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And once there, they all piled out and went in to buy their movie tickets, only to find out that it was sold out.
Oh, bummer.
Well, instead, the group decides to go, I think, like next door to this arcade for a few hours. Bummer. Yeah, bummer, yeah. So they decide to go to this arcade for a little bit, and they're there for a few hours. When it's time to go, though, it had started like misting outside, not fully raining, doing the shit that it did the whole time I was in Pittsburgh with you.
Yes.
Not fully raining, but basically should be. It just pisses me off even more.
Yep.
So the cousin and the brother braved the bed of the truck alone, and they had Robin sit in the cab of the truck with David as they drove the 20 minutes home. Very chivalrous of them.
Yeah, so kind. But the boys are like, let's go to that.
This is going to be so fun. Yeah, exactly. So they drop Robin off at her house before the three, little cousin David and little brother all go back home, where they ate some pizza and hung out for a little bit. And at around midnight, 20-year-old David grabs his keys, told his family that he'd be back later, and walks out the door, getting into his truck and driving off. But where he was heading, no one could have ever guessed. When David didn't return home the next morning, no one was really worried because, well, he's a 20-year-old man that has a job and has his own life and he has his own money. However, when 14-year-old Robin Edwards' father woke up to find that his daughter was missing from her bed at 5 a.m. the next morning, they were really concerned.
Oh my God, no.
Mainly because this wasn't her regular MO. Now, the backstory on this is that Robin had this habit of running away for a few days at a time. She would pack a bag, go blow off some 14-year-old angsty steam, and then return home a few days later. So initially, when her father realized that she wasn't home, that's kind of what went through his mind. But when her mother got home from work or either woke up, reports differed on that, at 7 a.m. and was filled in on the situation by her husband, she was really thrown off. Most of the time when Robin would do this, like I said, she would pack a bag and she would come back a few days later. But this time she didn't pack a bag though. And there was nothing that her mother could think of that would warrant Robin to want to run away this time. Like there wasn't a fight going on.
Usually parent-kid fight.
Or maybe
argument.
something. Yeah, who knows? And without wasting any time, Robin's mother reports her missing, telling police that she just knew something was wrong. And though they didn't really look into it and look for Robin because of her past, they did file the report, take all the information that her mother had about what she would be wearing and about that night before. The next day, on September 21st, 1987, a black Ford Ranger pickup truck was discovered in the parking lot of the Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge, which is about a 20-ish mile drive off of the parkway that is known as like a local hookup spot / a good place to buy weed and smoke some. And what caught the state police patrolman's eye that found this car was not that the truck was simply parked there, but instead the fact that the keys were in the ignition, the engine was on, the wipers were on, going back and forth, and the radio was playing relatively loudly. All the doors open and the driver's side window partially rolled down.
And no one inside.
No one inside. So the patrolman runs the plates to find that this truck belongs to 20-year-old David Lee Nobling. He looked around inside the truck's cab and found David's wallet was inside, like near the driver's side, with 2 pairs of shoes and a few articles of clothing. The patrolman called David's mom because she was like attached as a emergency contact, I guess. And she left work and went to the location where her son's truck was found, just 20 miles off of the Colonial Parkway. And basically, she just confirmed, like, yes, this is my son's truck. She shut it off and she left to go back to work. And at first, she's kind of giggling, like, what in the fuck is he doing?
Yeah. What's he up to?
That crazy dude. But then it all starts to sink back in. And she starts having this really unsettling feeling that something's wrong, mainly because she knows how much her son loves his truck. This truck was his pride and joy, and no matter what, he would never leave it in that condition, much less unlocked.
Right.
And as soon as she gets back to work, she picks up the phone and she calls David's father, which is her ex-husband, and tells him this entire situation. Immediately, he's like, yeah, something's really fucking wrong. Yeah, that's not right. He would never do that. So first he tries talking with police, who were adamant that this had to been a situation where he probably went skinny dipping with his date that he was with. They would probably show up soon. Like, don't worry about it. But that fucking wasn't enough for David's dad, because it didn't make sense, because it was fucking freezing. It's
right.
September.
Yeah, in Virginia.
In Virginia. It's cold. It was like 40, I think somewhere I read it was like 40 degrees that night.
Why are his shoes in there?
Exactly. You're going to walk down like a path just barefoot with this, you're going to leave your windshield wipers on, your doors open, weird. And you're going to go down there and like go skinny dipping. So instead of dicking around, David's dad puts on waders and he begins searching the beach and the water for anything that could potentially lead him to where his son is. Meanwhile, his mom was calling everyone that she could think of that would possibly know where David was. And pretty quickly they realized that the last time he was seen was actually leaving the house at midnight after eating pizza and hanging out on the night of the 19th, so 2 days earlier. David's parents took this information to the investigators, and though they didn't process the truck as a crime scene immediately, they did take note of the women's shoes found in the car and realized that they were a perfect match to the missing persons report filed for 14-year-old Robin Edwards.
Oh my God.
Who had been missing for the same amount of time as David, and they had been together the evening that they had both gone missing. So the puzzle pieces began to fall into place by September 23rd, 1987. I want to take this time to say that Robin is a victim in this. She's 14 years old and he's 20.
Absolutely.
Like, she's a victim in this on all angles of it. And I was really disappointed in some of the documentaries that I watched, in some of the articles that I read, in some of the podcasts that I listened to, where they just like almost made a joke of it.
Oh, unacceptable.
Or didn't acknowledge it at all.
That's fucking unacceptable.
And
she's 14 years old.
She's 14 years old. And they also try to, like, a lot of places were like, well, this is her MO. She'd run away. When she was 13, she had a boyfriend that was in his 20s. Like, that doesn't matter.
Still a victim.
That doesn't matter. She was not being protected. Right. And that's something that shouldn't be overlooked in this situation at all. And, this was not like some beautiful,
she wasn't protected then,
love story.
When they're talking like that, she's not being protected now.
Exactly. So I just really want, I even texted Christine about this. Christine has not covered this on it, and that's why we drink. But I texted her because I was just like, I need some guidance in how I can do this better than everyone else that has been saying it, and like what I need to do. And basically we just came to the conclusion that the best thing we can do is just acknowledge it, make sure that everyone knows that we're aware of it, but we don't want to be speaking ill of other victims in this story as well, because at the same time David is still a victim. So
pretty twisted, fucked up situation that we're in.
Yeah, it's really hard. And it actually almost deterred me from even covering this case right now, because I just didn't feel like I had the words, and I still don't feel like I have the exact words that I want. But I think that the best I can do, and I don't know that I'll ever have the words, is just acknowledge it and make sure that we're all aware of it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the puzzle pieces start falling into place by September 23rd, 1987. But unfortunately, it was too late. That morning, a jogger was running up and down the banks of the James River when they discovered the bodies of 20-year-old David and 14-year-old Robin. They were only roughly 100 feet apart from each other, and investigators rushed to the scene and positively identified both victims, ruling that they had each been shot to death. David was shot twice, once in the head and once in the shoulder, whereas Robin had one single gunshot wound to the back of her head, so she was shot execution style. Based off of the evidence found on David's hands and his injuries, plus the surrounding area between where they were found and the truck, investigators learned that Robin was likely shot first, at which point David attempted to flee by climbing an embankment, at which point he was shot in the shoulder, giving his attacker enough time to catch up with him and then shoot him in the head, killing him. Both David and Robin were partially clothed, with Robin's jeans being unbuttoned and her bra wrapped around her neck. An autopsy revealed that Robin did have sex the night that she was killed and was also sodomized. However, they were unsure if this was a part of the attack or due to her and David possibly having sex that evening, which is awful either way, because she's a 14-year-old girl. Now, I do want to go back, and I just want to go ahead and clear the air. I don't know why I didn't type this in. It was later determined that, yes, Robin was sexually assaulted by the attacker. Yes.
Wow.
Both Robin and David's autopsies revealed that they had eaten beans just before their death, which is what gave us the theory about their last movements, because investigators believe that David left his house at midnight, went to Robin, who'd snuck out, picked her up, following the plan that they had maybe concocted. The only time they could have made this plan was in that 20-minute drive home where it was only them in the cab of the truck. Right. Because the cousin and the brother were like, they didn't talk any other time.
Right.
David did his own thing. We did ours. So fucked up. And I'm sorry. I'm having such a hard time. It's really fucked up.
No, it's fucked up.
It's really fucked up. They likely, after picking her up, went to a Wendy's and had chili, or went to a Taco Bell before going to the location that the truck was found to maybe smoke weed and hook up, or just hook up. At which point they could have been pulled up on by someone, either a real police officer or someone posing as a police officer, if we go off the original FBI theory for Cathy and Becky's murders, which is why David's window would have been rolled down and his wallet was out of his pocket, sitting there on the side, and they were likely forced out of the car at gunpoint and led to the banks of the river where they were killed. Thankfully, though, they were able to obtain DNA evidence from Robin, but at this point in time, it's 1987, there was nothing really that they could do with DNA evidence.
Yeah.
So they just secured it. Plus, it had been, really contaminated due to being in the water. So they just logged it. However, the technology used on these samples today would end up being what helped bring them justice in the future.
Wow.
To the public, investigators did not announce that they were looking at any possible links or connections between Cathy and Becky's murders and David and Robin's, but internally there were several suspicions that this could have been the doing of the same person because of this one aspect of maybe they were pulled over.
Which makes 4 kills, which makes a serial killer.
Exactly. Despite the fact that they also took place 30 minutes apart and were different MOs. They were strangled and had their throats slit with a knife, whereas David and Robin were shot and sexually assaulted. But just like Cathy and Becky's case, this case goes cold.
Damn.
It was somewhere around 2:30 a.m. in the early morning hours of Sunday, April 10th, 1988. Chris Call and his friend were driving home from a trip to Richmond on the Colonial Parkway near York River Overlook in Yorktown. And as he's driving, this van pulls out behind him from literally the woods, like from this wooded, bushy area, not a fucking pull-off road, nothing, just the woods. This van pops out on the road behind him, and it's at this point pretty far behind him. Out of nowhere, it's hauling ass and starts riding his tail. Now, Chris couldn't see the driver because of how dark it was, but it was just really fucking weird. So he and his friend that are in the car are talking back and forth about this van as he passes this red 1982 Toyota Celica, C-E-L-I-C-A,
Celica? I have no idea.
I've never seen that, yeah. Pulled off on the shoulder with a light on inside. And immediately when he sees this, Chris is like, hey, that's my brother, 20-year-old Keith's car. Now, obviously, he's not going to stop for 2 reasons. Number 1, he's got this fucking van on his ass that popped out of God knows where in the bushes. And number 2, this was the Lover's Lane area that he knew his brother was probably hooking up with someone. So he's not going to pull over and be like, hey, Keith.
Yeah.
What's up, bud? What's up, man?
We're on our back way from road trip.
Yeah, we just got back from Richmond. See you home. So he's not going to do that. So Chris keeps driving, but after passing his brother's car, that van that has been up on his ass this entire time slows down and pulls a U-turn in the road and turns back. Weird, but whatever. It's not like there were cell phones back then that he could call his brother and be like, hey, just checking this creepy fucking weird ass van just drove past. So Chris goes home. About 4.5 hours later at 7 a.m., Keith and Chris's dad is driving to either work or church. The reports differ. I'm going to go with work because that's what I saw the most. And he passes the red Toyota. And just like Chris, he's like, hey, that's my son Keith's car. So he turns around, he pulls up behind the Toyota, he gets out and he walks up to Keith's car. And he finds that the driver's side door was only just pulled to. So he opens the car and he finds that there are keys inside sitting on the front seat, which was semi-folded forward. His son's watch and glasses were on the passenger side dashboard, with the glove compartment being wide open and a woman's checkbook in the front seat area as well. In the back seat, he saw a jacket, some empty beer cans, and he
hook up.
Yeah, he obviously knows what's going on here. And Keith probably went skinny dipping, was making out with this girl, goes down to the beach, beach. Maybe they fell asleep and he would wake up when the sun was bright enough and be back later that day. So he shuts the door to the car and he's like, that crazy boy. He gets back in his car and Keith's dad continues to drive wherever he was going. Well, about an hour later at 8 a.m., rangers called in the car and were referring to it as a crime scene, bringing tracker dogs to come search the area. Because when they went through the car an hour before Keith's dad got there at 6 in the morning, they had found 2 sets of clothes and underwear in the car. One belonging to a woman and the second belonging to a man. Thinking the same thing that Keith's dad did, they grabbed the clothes and they began searching for the teens, who were probably going to be naked when they found them and needing to cover up. So they took the clothes down there and were looking around, only to realize after 2 hours of driving around, going down to the beach, walking around searching for these kids, that they were nowhere to be found. So they rushed back to the car, they put the clothes exactly where they remembered grabbing them from, and they call it in, fearing that this is another double homicide.
Right, they've seen this before.
Like the first two. And in the car, they found that checkbook that the dad had seen, and it belonged to an 18-year-old girl named Cassandra Lee Haley, and found that the car was registered to a 20-year-old man named Richard Keith Call. Keith. Immediately, the place was swarming with rangers, investigative teams, and of course the media who had heard this call came in, who immediately began reporting on the missing teenagers before the rangers could even reach out to their families. Meaning their families learned about this from the radio.
Oh my God.
As the families are rushing to the scene.
Can you imagine?
No, Morgan, I couldn't. I would be so fucking mad. I would be so frantic. I'd be sick as fuck. You know, everyone's calling them like, oh my God, you know? So the families are rushing to the scene, still listening to the radio broadcast, and they are absolutely heartbroken to learn the horrific details. Because within that small time frame, the 3 tracker dogs had led their handlers into the water of Indian Creek from the car. Also, listening to this broadcast, though, was the FBI agent that worked Cathy and Becky's case, who was immediately fucking livid and thinking, like, what the fuck are the Rangers up to? Because they had not called the FBI in already. Clearly, something's going on. So he calls his higher-ups at Quantico, and they book it fucking down there with a team and immediately take over the scene. They're like, you guys are out. You're in our jurisdiction, you're gone. Now, realizing this case not only mimicked Cathy and Becky's case, but also David and Robin's because of many reasons. Number one, the location of the car. It made no sense that the two of them would pull off on a shoulder to hook up when there was pull-offs in both directions, forward and back, because there was the overlook that they were about to come up on, which you could pull off on.
Right.
It would not be a private setting if they were planning to hook up, being on the shoulder of the road. And there were no easy, frequently used paths that they could have used to walk down to the water anywhere near where they parked. And number two, that glove compartment. Just like with Cathy and David's wallets being out and the driver's side windows being unrolled or the car's doors being ajar, like, why would that glove compartment be open? The only reason for that is if you were getting out your registration in the States, of course.
Right.
Now, some people combat this saying, you know, maybe he kept condoms in there and they were hooking up, so he opened it to grab it out and didn't shut it. And I could give you that if this was a typical situation, but I really don't think it is, because the witnesses that had been with Keith and Cassandra hours before their murder. Basically, Cassandra and Keith had met in a business class at their college, and Keith had asked her out on a date for the night of Saturday, April 9th. It was their first date. It was their first time like really hanging out or talking even. So they were going to go see a movie, and then they went to a party. And basically at the party, everyone felt really weird vibes between these two, because even though they had come together and were obviously on a date, they like did not speak more than once or twice. They didn't even
Super
hang
awkward.
out. Yeah, really awkward. Like very short periods of time. That was it. With Cassandra's sister actually saying that it's because Cassandra was in a pretty long-term committed relationship that she had to keep secret. Now, what I'm about to say, this is alleged, but I did find it on multiple sources noting it, and they seem to be pretty reliable, but I'm just not all that sure, and I just want to tell you for transparency. But allegedly, her relationship had to be a secret because her boyfriend was black, which is really fucked up.
Yeah, again, fucked up.
I don't even have an excuse. Again, I don't have an excuse for it. I guess the time for both, but still, I'm not okay with either of them, and they shouldn't be normalized at all.
Right.
So she would go, Cassandra, if this was the case, Cassandra would go on these little dates with guys to kind of keep her cover. And Cassandra told her sister, like, yeah, we're not hooking up. I'm not even going to kiss him. Like, I'm just going to go on
I'm
the
not
date.
interested at all.
I'm not interested. I'm in a
boyfriend.
relationship.
Yeah.
Exactly. So either way, Cassandra and Keith were seen leaving the party sometime, and this is a super wide time frame to me, but okay, between 11:30 p.m. and 2:25 a.m. Most people say they left like 2-ish. Investigators used diving teams to search the area that the dogs had led them to, like took the dogs on boats, and the dogs all indicated these 2 different areas off the shore. But to this day, their bodies have never been found, and the FBI like followed several pretty promising leads and even had top suspects, yet nothing ever seemed to come of these leads or suspects. And just like the first 2, the case of Keith and Cassandra goes cold.
Fuck, dude.
In the early morning hours of September 5th, 1989. So first one was 1986, second one 1987,
88.
Third one 88, now we're in 89. September 5th, 1989, Labor Day weekend. A gold 1972 Chevrolet Nova was found abandoned in the westbound trucking side of a rest stop acceleration ramp off Interstate 64 in New Kent County, Virginia. Just as the car was about to be towed, like literally about to be picked up and towed off, after being called in because it was halfway in the road and halfway over the line in the road and on the side, the towing company gets a call from the Virginia State Police telling them to immediately stop messing with the car and get away from it. Because just minutes before they placed this call to tell them to stop, the car and the 2 people that were supposed to be in it were reported missing.
Oh, shit.
The car belonged to 21-year-old Daniel Lauer. Well, he and his brother's girlfriend, 18-year-old Annamaria Phelps, were driving east from Amelia County to Virginia Beach to stay with Daniel's brother, who was Annamaria's boyfriend, Clint, for the long weekend, the Labor Day weekend. They left their homes in Amelia County at approximately 11:15 p.m. on the night of September 5th, meaning they should have arrived at Clint's place sometime around 1:30 a.m. in the early morning hours of now September 5th. But when they were still not at Clint's by 2:30 a.m., Clint gets really worried, and he decides that he's going to go out looking for them, worrying that maybe they blew a tire or ran out of gas, who knows. So he hops in his car and he heads west towards Amelia County, where his parents and his brother and girlfriend lived, turning around just before the rest stop where the car would later be found just hours later, figuring that it was just a miscommunication. But the second Clint got home, he called his parents, waking them up, and tells them the entire situation, praying that they're going to be like, oh yeah, you know what, Daniel decided to just wait until the morning to be there. But that wasn't the case.
Right. It's so hard because, in that time frame, like we were watching all of these parents be like, oh, they'll be back.
Because it's the 80s.
I know.
Crazy. It's
hard to wrap our minds around it because it's just not like that
It's
today.
just not like that. Yeah. And for the most part, other than Robin, like these are 18 and older, right. So they have their own lives. They're doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. So immediately after getting this call from Clint, the parents called the Virginia State Police, filing a missing persons report for both Annamaria and Daniel. And by the time this was filed, they learn of the car just moments before it was towed away. Investigators go to the location and are very confused at the fact that the car was abandoned heading westbound, which didn't make any sense considering, based off of what the whole family's telling them, they should have been going east. But the real concerns came from what they found inside the car. Both the driver's side and passenger side doors were ajar. Annamaria's purse was still inside, but her wallet was missing, and the keys were still in the ignition, and the driver's side window was partially rolled down. But this time it had something clipped onto it. It was a gold roach clip, like for a blunt or a joint, with little feathers on it that Annamaria took with her everywhere. But missing from the car was, like I said, Annamaria's wallet, $800 in cash that Daniel's parents had given him, along with an electric blanket that Daniel's mom had just given him when he pulled out 11:15 because it was going to be a really cold drive. And it was big enough for him and Annamaria. Under the car was covered in dirt and grass stains and like clumps of earth that were like freshly put on there, ripped out of the ground, indicating that this car had been driven through a like wooded area, a grassy field or something like just before it was
get
discovered.
that just from the runway around.
Exactly.
That's gravel.
Yet there were no signs of a struggle anywhere in the car or outside of the car. Investigators used tracker dogs and helicopters to search the area for Annamaria and Daniel, but they were unsuccessful. At first, this case didn't really seem to have super tight connections with the first three because number one, it was several miles away from the other crimes. And number two, there was cash and other things taken from the car. But after examining the scene with profilers, we see the same clues that suggest that they might have been pulled over by someone, which would be a major connecting factor. But it wouldn't be until October 21st, 1989 that the skeletal remains of both Annamaria and Daniel would be found by turkey hunters in a wooded area along Interstate 64 between Williamsburg and Richmond, along a logging road that was a little over a mile away from the rest stop where the car was found.
Damn.
Their bodies had been covered using the electric blanket that Daniel's mother had given him just before he left. And because of the decomposition, they had to use dental records to identify both of the victims. Plus, they found Annamaria's locket was still around her neck. And I believe they're some clothes, or maybe they were fully dressed. Therefore, they could not determine their exact cause of death other than the fact that they could see evidence of knife markings on Annamaria's bones and abdomen. Well, something that wasn't released until 2010, but plays a large role in connecting the murders of Annamaria and Daniel to the murders of Keith and Cassandra, which was the third, actually came from a note that was found in Annamaria's apartment when it was searched after her death. And this note indicated that she was planning to meet someone in a blue van at a rest stop with the person's name and phone number. Now, I'm not sure what exactly this person's name was or what the phone number was or anything like that, but it's the van that stood out most to me. As it was similar to the one that Chris, Keith's brother, who got that van up on his ass when he was driving past his brother's car that night, that's what connects it. Like, okay, there's a van there, there's a van in this. But unfortunately, though, this lead went cold somehow, along with all now 8 victims' cases.
And we don't know what they were meeting for.
We have no idea.
Just
some people suggest that it was to pick up weed for their drive, but obviously we don't know for sure.
Okay.
Now, fast forward to 2022. There was another case connected to the Colonial Parkway Murders. 2022. Yep. So we're in 2022 now. That's how long these cases were unsolved. And still are at this point. There was another case connected to the Colonial Parkway Murders that had not yet been linked. And this is the 1989 case of 29-year-old Teresa Lynn or Terri Spa Howell. In the early morning hours of July 1st, 1983, Terri was seen leaving the Zodiac Club, which was this super popular nightclub in Hampton, Virginia, at approximately 2:30 a.m. And Hampton, like, if this is the Colonial Parkway, the murders happened with Annamaria and Daniel here, and then it was like the first 3 like in a little line like this, and then it's like over here is where where Hampton, Virginia is. So it's a bit of a drive away from these areas, but so was Annamaria's and Daniel's,
right?
Just in the opposite direction.
But if you put like a center point, it's really not.
They're
that
in
far.
the same radius, 100%. So she was seen leaving the Zodiac Club at approximately 2:30 a.m. Only 7 hours later, she would be found by a construction worker in a wooded area off Butler Farm Road near a golf course in Hampton, Virginia, like towards the Colonial Parkway from where the Zodiac Club was. She had been strangled to death and sexually assaulted, which is how investigators were able to obtain some DNA. At the time, the technology was not available for them to test this DNA, but in 2022, when they ran it in the system, it matched with that small sample that was obtained from 14-year-old Robin Edwards. And it wasn't until January of 2024 that a match to a suspect would be confirmed as belonging to a man that investigators had had on their radar since 1987.
The first one.
The second murders.
The second one.
Yeah.
With Robin.
Yep. It was a man named Alan Wade Wilmer Sr., locally known as Pokey. Wilmer was a fisherman, primarily harvesting clams and oysters, and owned his own tree cutting company on the side. He was an avid member of local hunting clubs and got in a lot of trouble. Well, the reason that investigators even had Wilmer on their radar was because of several tips that were sent in from 1986, 1987, 1988. Because Wilmer just wasn't locally known as Pokey, but also known as a fucking creep. He was known to be a peeping Tom that would stalk couples on Lover's Lane off the Colonial Parkway. And on one occasion, during the same time frame of the first two murders, so 1986, 1987, he actually snuck up to an open window of a car on a lover's lane with a couple making out inside. According to the couple, they're making out, right? Doing their thing. And out of nowhere, they hear a man's voice say, "Are you girls having fun?"
The fuck?
Immediately, they turn the fuck around and they're like, what the hell? And when Wilmer realizes that it's a guy that just has long hair and his girlfriend, he walks off and he's like, yeah, I'm glad. Gets back into his 1966 Dodge truck that had this very distinctive license plate that either said "Eat them" or "M Raw." Reports vary, but he had several cars.
What the fuck?
So when investigators get this tip after the murders of Keith and Cassandra, alarm bells go off because not only is he known as this peeping Tom lover's lane fucking freak, but he clearly was searching for lesbian couples to harass on these lovers lanes. So immediately, Cathy and Becky. The FBI then set up surveillance on Wilmer in 1987, Morgan. And while driving past his trailer where he lived with his brother, who also had a long criminal history, they saw him doing some really weird shit. Now, first off, through their surveillance, they learned that he not only had that 1966 Dodge Fargo pickup.
Don't tell me he had a van.
But often rotated between three other vehicles. A white pickup truck, a silver 1989 Ford F-150, and a large van.
You're fucking kidding me.
But the weird shit that they witnessed while they were surveilling him this day was actually Wilmer in his front yard, not only deep cleaning his truck inside and out, but cutting out the upholstery, replacing it, and spray painting the entire truck.
What?
This was enough cause for investigators to make him suspect number one in Robin and David's case, get a warrant to search his home, and bring him in for questioning. Inside his home, they found several odd things, such as handcuffs, several guns, several hunting and fishing knives, ropes, nautical lines, whatever you can imagine, etc., and lots and lots of unsettling, violent porn. But they couldn't find anything that would directly tie him to any of these cases, and he passed a fucking polygraph, so they had to let him go.
Holy shit.
By the time the DNA was connected...
Nothing to connect him? I mean, can't you just be like, you have all the right things, bro?
Right.
Like, I just don't know what to tell you.
I don't know what to tell you, but you did
It's either like terrible luck.
Right.
But like, you're a creep anyway.
Yeah.
So just come with us.
Exactly. By the time the DNA connected Alan Wade Wilmer Sr. to these crimes, which was this year, 2024, he had been dead for 7 years. He died in 2017 at the age
the rest of his life
of 63. The FBI is still looking for information regarding Wilmer's whereabouts and other information that could potentially help connect him to other crimes that they do not have DNA for. So they are asking for the help of the public. Here is the statement that they left in a January 10th, 2024 CNN article written by Steve Almase and Sarah Smart that reads, quote, "In the 1980s, Wilmer was a fisherman who often docked his commercial fishing boat at Gloucester, Chester County and Middlesex County, state police said in this news release. He also ran a tree service and frequently hunted. He was about 5 foot 5 inches tall, muscular, weighing in at approximately 165 pounds, according to state police, who have asked anyone who may have had contact with Wilmer during this time to come forward. Wilmer drove a distinctive blue 1966 Dodge Fargo pickup truck with Virginia license plate that read MRAW, EM-RAW, and had some writing on the truck's passenger side door. Quote, anyone who may have worked with Alan W. Wilmer Sr. or hunted with him, farmed oysters and clams with him, docked next to him at marinas in the Northern Neck, Hampton Roads, or Middle Peninsula areas, or hung out with him at all is encouraged to contact the FBI by calling 1-800-CALL-FBI or submitting a tip online at www.tips.fbi.gov. And that is the Colonial Parkway Murders.
I need to drop the link of this episode to my dad's bass fishing group.
Oh my God,
Facebook
yeah.
Chat.
I just had chills all over my body.
Because like fishermen know everybody.
They have age progressed pictures of him through all the years. This is what he looked like in the 60s. This is what he looked like in the 70s, the 90s, 80s, 90s.
Like,
yeah.
I can't tell you. I mean, my dad will be walking. He's like, oh, I fished with him out in Maryland back in
no, he's not from Maryland. He might be from Maryland.
You know what I mean? Like my dad does that with people. They're all like that.
Yeah, you should send it in there.
I was like, Dad, drop the fucking link, bro.
Yeah.
I'll get you some photos.
Yeah.
I'll post it from your account.
Yeah.
I'll join it. Let me
join.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Lived his fucking life.
And had been on there. And what pisses me the fuck off is, and also
when someone's on their radar and they just let him go, do you not continue watching?
You know, I understand that you didn't have the sufficient evidence at the time, but like this, guys, I only told you the four couples and one individual girl that were all connected, but he's also connected to another crime, and there are like 6 other potential Colonial Parkway murders that they have that I just couldn't take us through. It would take us 2 more episodes. So please go read up on this. If you guys live in this area, send this to your dads that like fishing, to your uncles, to anyone.
Like hunting.
Yeah, I mean, anything.
People like that, they fucking know each other.
You know, I don't give a fuck this dude's dead. I want to make sure that all these victims and their families know what the fuck happened to them.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad.
So
Everything
sad.
is so fucking tragic.
So everything.
But I feel like that last one, I'm not sorry, Runway Ramp.
Oh, Annamaria and Daniel.
It showed a little bit of remorse. Covered their bodies.
That's what got me too. So some people think that case isn't connected, but the van, the car window being rolled down, and it kind of seems to me like a taunt to put the fucking roach clip on there. Like,
I agree.
So close.
Right. But not quite.
And it also shows escalation.
Yeah.
But then he's like feeling remorse for leaving their bodies like that, or what's that about? Because all the other bodies he's disposed of in water or tried to push down a ravine.
Well, in the first 2, I could see, because he's fucking creep, he's sick fuck, he's
Peeping Tom,
and clearly he's a sick individual. I'm not saying these are normal thoughts, but I'm trying to put myself in his mind. He's looking at relationships that to his mind are not acceptable.
So he thinks he's like a Dexter killer?
Right.
Like, who know? I don't know. Or maybe, but now we know that it's happening. The first 2 or 3 were actually in the fall. For 3 years in a row. So it's almost like he gets that inkling. But then after that, it's just haywire.
Well, it's fishing season in the spring and summer.
And he's out there on the water.
And then he gets his inkling because he's prepping for fucking hunting season.
Right. Now, my question is with Chris and Keith call the, where the red Toyota was pulled off on the side and the brother passed it and the van was on his ass. My question is because the brother was like, oh yeah, the light was on inside my brother's car. And we know that when the dad got there, that the front door was ajar, it was open. So do we think that they had been killed prior and maybe were still in the car, and maybe this was Alan Wilmer chasing them off so they wouldn't stop and go near the car to see if this person wanted help?
Oh, maybe. And then he just U-turned, went back, and was waiting for the next car to pop in.
To make sure that he had his cover.
Because the light was probably on because the door was ajar. I don't know how cars work then, but that's how they work now.
I mean, probably, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
because like, why would he run them off?
Then he'll go back and hide, and then any other car, because I'm sure it's a really desolate time.
Right.
Very minimal drivers.
Right.
Yeah. Damn.
So
that's terrible. I've heard of it only from cover this case, which you did a great job.
Thank you.
But especially because all the subjects are so touchy, I think you did a good job.
Oh, thank you.
I have never heard of it.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy to me is I'm like, I knew this case, but I don't know that prior to me starting my research on it that I had ever fully learned about the case. I mean, it's a really popular case, so I knew a lot about it, but I had never listened to like all and research like all of the combining factors.
I'm also like 90% sure that Criminal Minds has an episode based
probably
off of this.
I mean, especially with it being so involved with like profiling and shit like that.
Yeah.
So,
because I was like able to, I don't know. That was fucking terrible.
It's a really, really awful case.
Fucking serial killer got to live the rest of his life.
Literally got to live the rest of his life.
I just don't understand. So like, I know that you don't have like the money and the assets to continue monitoring somebody, but when someone is a suspect and you like wholeheartely believe, like, I know it's this guy, we just can't fucking get
4 years in a row. You have 2 murders per year.
Why don't you spare? You're the United States government. You can spare one person to just be continually monitoring
or
that
just
guy
checking in
to make sure that
and
we're good.
Who knows, maybe they had. But what's really weird is that for the longest they refused to put his DNA in CODIS.
That's weird.
So to me, I'm like, was he an informant on something, or like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and he wasn't a ranger. He wasn't an officer. He had no one in his face.
Oh, I didn't even bring this up because I didn't have time to go down that rabbit hole. But one of the second number one suspects, so number two suspect,
is an officer.
Was a ranger.
His name was. That's what I was kind of the vibe I was getting.
Or Clyde Lee, maybe that's his name. Clyde
Especially the one where they were like, "Oh, we'll take the clothes," and like I thought that he would.
Well, they lied about that. That's what I was going back to. They actually fucking lied when the FBI came in, because when they were like, "Yeah, you know, we came up, we pulled up on it at 8. We found out that there were some reports from it from 5 and 6 and 7. So we came to check it out. We realized what the situation was." Well, then when they interviewed Keith's dad, who had been and saw the car at 7 o'clock that morning, he's like, tells them everything that's in the car, and it was significantly less than what the Rangers said they found in the car. So they go back to the Rangers and they're like, what the fuck is this about? So did the killer come back to the scene and drop this off? And they're like, actually, we took the kids' clothes and we looked, but they didn't admit it at first. They put it back and acted like they didn't take anything out.
That's fucked up. Yeah, so, I could see it being,
and remember,
like,
that was the one where the FBI agent came in and was like, why the fuck haven't you called us yet?
Yeah, I could see it being like, if it was a Ranger, the killer, he answers the call, he's back on shift, and he knows that he probably fucked up. He left evidence because he was quick with it.
And he goes and he moves
and he goes in there. He's like, hey, man, let's just take these clothes real quick. That way these kids, you know, they have something to put on. And he's fumbling shit. And they're hiding whatever he needs to fucking hide. Which has bought himself time by not calling in the FBI, but having to take it back because the other guy's like, wait, this is a crime scene. We got to put this back. He's like, oh, yeah, you're right, man.
Well,
you know, like,
and especially maybe after they learned about the fact that Keith's dad had been there. It was only at that point that they probably were like, oh, well, actually. But okay.
It's giving smiley face.
Yes.
But couples.
Here's another thing, though, about Keith and Cassandra. It was Keith and Cassandra. Yes. Keith and Cassandra. Cassandra's sister was like, she wasn't going to hook up with him. She wasn't going to be doing anything with him. Why are they completely naked? Was that against their will, or was that... Because remember, the whole point of it is they shouldn't have even been pulled off there in the first place.
Right.
Because it didn't make any sense. That would not be a lover's lane area. And Keith's ex-girlfriend, who had just broken up with like 2 weeks prior, they were just kind of honestly on a break. She said to investigators, like, why would he be there? He would never go there. Like,
I think they met him at the truck stop. That was the
No. This is one that was pulled off on the side, not Annamaria and David.
Oh.
Or Daniel.
Oh, I'm with you now.
Yeah.
Red car.
Yeah, the red car Toyota that the brother saw, the van chased him off. Mom came back through. So Keith and Cassandra, they were the ones that went to that party and they weren't doing good together. She had the boyfriend that she had to keep a secret and would go on these little dates. And he would have had to taken the route that they were heading home to drop her off. So the theory is with the little, you know, with the ex-girlfriend of Keith's being like, he would never go there. Like, first off, why the fuck would we do that? That makes no sense. So she's like, we've never done that before. I dated him for like 4 years. Like, we've never been there. And you know, guys recycle.
Guys recycle spots.
Yeah, 100%. They don't know anywhere else to go.
They got their spots and that's that.
Exactly. So to me, I feel like their clothes were taken off. And my next question is like, okay, well, were the beer bottles theirs? Were they from before the party? Were they from at the party? Were they even tested did they pull any like official fingerprints? Because I know that they fingerprinted all these cars and they found like over 100 fingerprints and which we all know that fingerprint in a car is good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, because so many people get in and out.
That's just fucking crazy.
And then David with Robin, the car just being like wide open, lights on, fucking radio on, all this shit.
Also weird.
Like, okay.
Pulled out at gunpoint though, that one.
That one makes sense to be pulled out at gunpoint.
So sad. All of them. Terrible.
All of them terrible.
Tragic.
Terrible. It's just so sad because it just, why? Just opportunity.
Yeah.
No target necessarily.
A creep.
Just going out and being like, I think I want to kill someone tonight.
Sick individual.
Because you can't just not, like, in all these instances, like Cathy and Becky, they had been tied up. You came with supplies.
Right.
You knew what you were doing. And I'm sure there's several other victims of his.
I agree.
So
yeah, these
hopefully in the next few years, now that they have his shit in the database officially now, maybe they'll be able to
tie a couple more.
Yeah.
Get some answers. Oh, that's so sad.
So terrible. All right, guys.
Thanks for covering that.
You're so welcome. Yes. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, we'll talk to you next week. Actually, we'll be talking to you for 200, but we'll do the dream work.
Come talk to us on Patreon.
Yeah, come hang out with us on Patreon. If you want to, you don't have to. We got a $10 tier and a $5 tier. Patreon.com/crazycrimes. You're feeling crazy.
We say you don't have to, but we would like you to.
Also, I want to thank all you guys with their sweet 5-star reviews.
Yeah.
They're really sweet. I love seeing these come in. I saw one last night that I don't know if it's gone on public yet, because we get to see the back end. Not that we can do anything about it, but it's going out either way. But I saw one last night that made me giggle to myself when it came through on our email. And it said, let me find it. Oh, it's out here now. It's from Soph, and it says, they goated for real.
They
5-star.
goated for real.
Yeah. Oh, look, we got a bad one. It's Marty Bass. MB.
On Apple.
I shouldn't have to fast forward 20 minutes per episode to listen. All right.
Why are you still here?
What are you? It says MB.
That's him.
That has to be. No, it's not. He would have been like, and that bitch can't read. This is someone else. This is Mary Beth.
This is someone pretending to be Marty Bass to hide their true identity. Here's the fucking deal. Don't listen.
There's only one episode in the last 2 months I can think of that had a 20-minute intro too. So I really don't know what else to tell you.
And also, like, is it that hard for you to fast forward?
But you know what, Morgan? When we have haters, it means that we're doing good.
Yeah, you're right.
We're doing something right. Yeah.
But also, like, don't be fucking lazy. Just fast forward. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, that was sad because I went to go read off all your awesome 5-star reviews that made me happy just to see that shit. So I'm going to go
Love you,
fucking
bye.
cry now. Love you. Bye.